You're listening to Winnipeg's Classic 107. My name is Simon Rusnak. It's the first Friday of June, and regular listeners know that, of course, means it's time for the What to Read segment. As always, Chris Hall from McNally Robinson Booksellers joins me with his picks. Hello, Chris.
Hello, Simon.
Are you keeping cool during this first heat wave of the season?
I am trying to keep cool. I'm spending some time in my basement watching the odd hockey game here and there.
Yeah. I hear that's going on. Just kidding. I've been doing the exact same thing. We have the the exact same plan. I'm sure many people do, but also making time to do a little bit of reading. I'm sure.
Mhm.
Let's start things off right from the get-go. Where do you want to begin?
I want to begin by going outside, I guess. A book called The Heartbeat of Trees, Embracing Our Ancient Bond with Forests and Nature. And this is by an author named Peter Wolleben. I'm guessing a little bit on the pronunciation there, but Peter Wolleben is very well known for a book called The Hidden Life of Trees that came out a few years ago. We have sold it like crazy. It's really appealed to people. And it was about or he explored the ways that trees communicate with each other in that book. They send messages to each other via their root systems, the chemical components of those kinds of messages, as well as sending particles in the air, things like that. And so now in this new book, he's turned his attention to how trees communicate with us. Possibly not literally speaking to us, but who knows? And but for example, like when you go into a forest, why do the trees calm us? Why do our heart rates and blood pressure literally ease as we spend that first moments in a forest? He's got a very informal style. I love the way it feels like you're just having a chat with him. And he opens with very simple questions, just exploring smells and sounds, tastes of the forest. But then he gets into the scientific research of concepts like electricity and chemistry for how are these trees having this effect on us, and to what extent is it true that they are communicating with us, and vice versa, perhaps. It's a great book, I think, to take to the campsite or the cottage in the summer. Look at the trees in a whole new way. I think, it's got. I think it's got great, great potential.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. It sounds like one of those perfect outdoor reads. One of those
Mm-hmm.
that you got to be in the forest, you got to be at the cabin, or maybe even in one of the parks. And I mean, for us here in Winnipeg, we're treated to such a beautiful tree canopy. So to
Yes.
look at them with fresh eyes and kind of realize in a way that they're communicating, just
Yeah.
going for a walk does so much for you, especially surrounded by those trees. It
Yeah.
really is something that's so special.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you kind of keep with the nature theme in the next title, Islands
Mm-hmm.
of Abandonment, Nature Rebounding in the Post-Human Landscape by Cal Flynn. Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit more about this one.
Sure. Yeah, this is absolutely about nature again. This one reminds me of a book that came out a few years ago. It was called The World Without Us by Alan Wiseman. And it charted basically year after year what would happen
Mhm.
in the world if humans suddenly ceased to exist. So nature would slowly take back over. And so in this new book, Cal Flynn explores areas of the world where, for multiple reasons like war or disaster or disease, um, the landscape has been abandoned by humans. And in each case, she finds that nature has returned and it's thriving in some way. So examples like the return of endangered ocean life in the Bikini Atoll in the Pacific Ocean, where the US tested the hydrogen bombs 50 plus years ago,
Mhm.
or the thriving flora and fauna in demilitarized zones of Cyprus and the Korean Peninsula, the site of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, lots of military installations around the world that are not being used. And so, yeah, nature comes back. The book doesn't let us off the hook in our role in destroying the environment, but it does tell us just how powerful nature is, and that it will carry on if we do truly cause ourselves disaster. So there was an earlier book this year I called The Centaur's Wife I was recommending,
Yeah.
where centaurs return when this happens, which I
Yeah.
found
Yeah.
I'm never going to forget. I'm always going to think of centaurs now when I think of
A
nature
post-human
coming back.
world. Yeah, a
Yeah, that's right.
post-human world. From the future, the far off future to our very human past, more specifically the 17th century for the next title. Is that right?
Hmm. Yes, I switched to fiction now. This is a novel called Everyone Knows Your Mother is a Witch. It's by Rivka Galchen. It's set, as you say, in 1618 in Germany. The Holy Roman Empire is being challenged by new Protestant upstarts, and plague is spreading. And our main character, Katharina Kepler, has been accused of being a witch. And the book is, in part at least, her defense. She comes across as a normal, partly helpful, partly petty woman, but whose every past action is now held up to the light of this new accusation. The story has some very contemporary resonances. It's amazing. I mean, there's a community where a collective aggression, hysterical fear, the individuals being affected by society, where superstition and rumor have so much power, and where state and church are motivated by something completely different. It just made me think of the vulnerability of us as individuals to forces outside our control. I related very strongly to this novel right now. It's got a lot to say about today, I think.
Yeah. Learning from the past, and speaking of learning from the past, it also draws on some historical documents too, right? It's not just a purely fictional work.
That's true. You've picked up on that, because Katharina Kepler is the mother of Johannes Kepler, famous astronomist, and so this comes. His mother really was accused of being a witch and went through the trials and things. So yeah, it has historical a kernel of truth, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. Let's talk about the next title, The Maidens.
Yeah.
Tell us about this one.
Yeah, it's by Alex Michaelides. He burst on the scene last year with a book called The Silent Patient. So this, The Maidens, is his follow-up. It's a little more of a thriller than the last one I was talking about. Mariana, our main character here, she's convinced that the professor of Greek tragedy at Cambridge University is a murderer. And the trouble she's having proving that is he's beloved by staff, by students, and in particular by a secret society of female students known as the Maidens. But one student after another is found murdered, as happens in these books. Suspense mounts as Mariana tries to figure out what's going on. So yeah, page turner, great read. It weaves Greek mythology together with modern psychological thriller. It certainly pulls you in, and it'll, I think, have you guessing right to the end. So it's entertaining read.
Well, I was gonna say, sounds like another perfect summer read. You know, one of those where you spend the whole day in the park, first reading about the trees, and then reading about a secret society of maidens who follow this one professor. I mean, it
sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it sounds like a great way to spend a day, is what I was gonna say. You've got one more pick for this month of June. Tell us about this one.
This one's called another novel. It's called Heaven by Mieko Kawakami, Japanese author, young Japanese author. She came out, or her book was translated, I guess, last year. It was called Breasts and Eggs. And it was a real discovery for me and for several of us booksellers around here. And so we're currently recommending it in paperback. This new one, Heaven, it's a bit like the previous novel. It tells a story from a very personal, intimate level of a character. And in this case, it's a young 14-year-old boy who is subject to some pretty cruel bullying in school. He manages to connect with a girl in his class. She's also the target of bullying. And the two of them, I mean, the story is about the relationship that the two of them are able to build in their 14-year-old way, and to help each other through some very difficult days in school. The power of these novels is quite different from the previous one I was talking about. It's not the thrill of what happens next, but it's the intimacy at the heart of these stories. They're able to generate an emotional response, but it's really out of the drama of everyday kinds of events rather than murders all around us, which I hope at least is not part of our everyday life. But I'm moved by books like by Heaven and Breasts and Eggs. They're quiet, they're contemplative, but they have an emotional impact.
Well, Chris, as always, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us at Classic 107, bringing your picks that can always be found up on the website, classic107.com, or McNally's website, McNallyRobinson.com. Chris, keep cool and happy reading.
Thank you very much, Simon.
And I guess go Jets, go.
That's for sure.
Take care.
Thanks.